Okay, good morning. We're glad you are all here to participate in this presentation today. We are so honored to have a previous resident and a person who grew up in our area, born in Alpena and grew up in Ossineke, went away for a few years like most of us did, and then find ourselves back here in a place that we all love. So it's really nice to have her back and contribute to our learning here today and our knowledge about things that most of us don't ever have a chance to experience firsthand. So Dr. Kelly Bushéy is with us today. She's spent her life working with all kinds of people, children a lot of the time. She has a PhD and a bunch of other letters after her name there that we'll get her to explain when she comes up, because I didn't get a chance to ask her about those. But the main thing today is Kelly's going to give us her personal opinions and impressions of her time in the Ukraine, which most of us are very curious about and don't have the chance to go. So I'm going to get out from in front of the camera now. And Kelly, if you'd come on up here and take charge of the mic, and you're good to go. And if you would, in Zoom land out there, kind of hold your questions until the end, unless it's really critical. Then you can type it in the chat and we'll try to get it to Kelly during the presentation. But other than that, we will ask for questions at the end. Okay, Kelly.
Great. Thank you so much.
You bet.
All right. Well, I'm just assuming that you can see me. I'm standing behind a podium and I feel like I'm like John the Baptist with my head on a platter. Like that's all you see. But it is good to be here. And it's true, Rocky. I grew up here in Northeast Michigan. I like to say I was born at a young age in Alpena General back in the day. And that was many, many years ago. But today I am humbled to be here in my community. Talking about a personal experience that I had, but in my community where I grew up, you know. And I am especially honored to have Mrs. Paquette here in the room with me. And I'm trying not to cry, but you know, you think about the people that influenced your life. And I did, after coming back from my trip to help Ukrainian refugees, my goal was to go to Sanborn Elementary School. And when I get to that illustration, I want you to know that Mrs. Paquette is who was an aide there when I was a little girl at Sanborn Elementary School. So when I get to that point in this story, my personal experience that I'm sharing, Mrs. Paquette, I want you to know that I will never forget the kindness that you gave to me and the influence on my education. Because, you know, you can have more degrees in Fahrenheit, and I do appear to have that. I removed like a lot of the acronyms even to make it shorter. But you can have more degrees in Fahrenheit and still be useless, because people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And you cared for me, Mrs. Paquette. And all of the people that influenced my life, I'm grateful for that. But did this opportunity to go to help Ukrainian refugees come because of education? Did I go there because I was a doctor? Well, I'm not that kind of doctor, medical doctor, to help people in the need, like to stop the blood from bleeding. I have a PhD in psychology, and that helps people with emotional needs. And so the people that I went to help were children and mothers. The mothers of the children who had to flee their country and leave their husbands, because the ages were between the ages of 18 to 60. The men had to stay. If you were 18 to 60 years of age and you were a male, you had to stay in the Ukraine and fight. So the women left with their children. Some men, some 15-year-old boys were at this place where I'll explain a little bit more, where we went in and tried to help with this emotional need. When the war first broke out, which by the way was on, let's see, I'll advance this slide here, was on February 24th. So on February 24th, the war began against the Ukraine. I arrived 51 days later. 51 days after February 24th, I went in to help the mothers and the children of the men who stayed and were still fighting for their country. You know, so why is this important? You know, the Association of Lifelong Learners? Because many of you wish that you could have went and you couldn't. But you did because you sent supplies. The need is great. I was able to go because of the kindness of other people who generously gave to an organization that bought my ticket, and we went with supplies. So you did get to go. I went with an organization that I graduated from a college in upstate New York, and Word of Life, it's called Word of Life, not to be associated with Word of Life here, but Word of Life International. They are in over 80 countries, and they work specifically with youth. And I went up there and I got a degree in School of Youth and Missions. This is a faith-based perspective. While I want to respect what everybody believes, I have to give my personal experience and how we helped these women and children when they questioned God. Where are you? It's interesting that when things happen, many people say, oh my God, oh my God. Some are praying and some are just like, it's an exclamation. This is a personal experience of me going to two separate locations, one in Romania and one in Hungary, helping Ukrainian refugees, and some of them were Russians. Two Russian young women that were there helping the youth in the Ukraine. Imagine the ambivalence, imagine the emotional duress that they felt because their country, their homeland, had bombed the country that they were serving and loving. They were serving youth there. They left Russia to go help Ukrainian youth. It was very emotional. So what did we do? What did we do? How do you offer hope when it seems so hopeless? Their husbands are still there. Their children, some of them, their children, they may have been a 19-year-old or a 21-year-old because they were older. They left their children there. Wives left their husbands. You'll be introduced to a woman whose name is Marguerite, whose husband was still there. He was still there. And she left, and she was 7 months pregnant. And on bed rest, because with the trauma, you see, that's what stress does, right? So I'm a psychologist and I specialize in helping people with stress and anxiety. So you're like, hey, how do you have time to be here? You must be very busy. Yes, but don't we all help where we can? And with the things that we can. I said earlier, did they really want my education? It did help because I was able to help people know how to de-escalate a panic attack and show them how to do that. And a month after I got back, we got news from one of the ladies that was in our narrative group therapy who said, when you talked about panic attacks, I thought, okay. And I paid attention, but I never knew that I would need to know how, because my daughter, my 11-year-old daughter, came in the middle of the night and she was exhibiting signs of a panic attack. I would have just thought she had a nightmare. And I was able to use what I learned and comfort her. So that's what we do. And you can never retire from learning, right? I love the motto and your mission. You know, some people, I'm sure they probably ask you, hey, have you retired? And you're like, I retire every night. See, because, you know, you're still active in your communities, and I want to thank you for that. You're active in your community. The reason that you're watching this is because you want to know, and root word of knowledge is to know, but you also care. So I come to you today humbly and gratefully to share my personal experience, and I need to be able to express what I what I experienced as well. It took me a good 6 weeks to unpack what I felt. And I even had a panic attack myself. It took 4 weeks. 4 weeks after I was back, it caught up to me. Because we can stay in fight or flight. And many of us are way too busy. When we slow down, that's when the panic, that's when you're, oh, whoa, wait a minute. Your body tells you, hey, you got to start fighting. It's too early to relax. We'll talk more about that, but let's go into this. The Russian invasion of the Ukraine in February has displaced 1/3 of the country's population. 1/3. The people that these Ukrainian refugees, they're displaced. What a euphemism. They not only lost their home, they lost their country. Lost loved ones. Their entire world in the Ukraine is different now. Similar to us after the attacks of 9/11. I travel all the time. And I'm still shocked and still shocked that I'm still shocked that when I go through security and I'm like, take your shoes off, take this off, belt off. And I'm like, where do I put my dignity? And then I stand in that thing and I have to put my hands up like this. And I feel every time I do that, I'm like, I wasn't the criminal. I wasn't the criminal. Put your hands up. It's humiliating. I don't even like it now. But it keeps us safe. It keeps us safe. Where is the safety? Missiles are still happening. They're still attacking the Ukraine. These were displaced people that we went to help encourage and come alongside them in their point of need. I don't come with answers. I wanted to listen. No, so what do you do, right? Because I don't know Ukrainian and my Russian is 0 as well. The universal language of love. The universal language is love. They didn't care how much I knew. They didn't call me doctor. I had an interpreter. I had an adult interpreter when I worked with the adults, and I had an 11-year-old interpreter who was actually taller than me. See this arrow right here to the right of the screen? That's actually a husband of one of the women that was in the group that I was able to lead, to sit around and listen to them. And he was listening to someone else. This is in the Ukraine, and they would send pictures. And he was there listening to somebody else and showing kindness and compassion. This was a line, they were waiting for bags of food and supplies, some of which maybe you even helped donate. I came back and I read in the newspaper the day I got back of the fundraiser. I think they had it in Johnson Hall. And they raised like thousands and thousands of dollars. And I was so proud of my community and of Alpena Community College, where I'm an adjunct faculty and I teach psychology here. So I was like, yes, because the need is still great. This picture was just taken, this was July 6th. It's still happening. So I was packing. I don't know if you guys can see me. I'm going to assume you can see me, but you see my backpack? Oh, yeah. Oh, like here? Oh, yeah. Oh, there it is, guys. This was my backpack. How's the back of my hair look? Oh, yeah. There it is. So when I was packing I'm embarrassed, but I'm gonna just lay it all on the line. Here it is. I was packing and I had an entire suitcase and I was trying to think, which boots should I wear? And I was getting my outfits together. And for me, it was like the Holy Spirit. We're body, we are mind, and we are spirit, right? For me, it was my Holy Spirit, the Spirit saying, what are you packing? They left with the shirt on their back. Some didn't even have a chance to pack a backpack, let alone a suitcase. And you're wondering what boots you're gonna wear? Your boots on the ground, girl. You take yourself, you take your heart. And I thought, but yeah, I need some things. Don't go extreme. Don't go extreme. Pack what you need. And that's what I did. So everything I needed for my time there, I put in my backpack. I had everything I needed. There was a little boy who told me a story, and it was my last hours, because I was dropped off to fly out and fly back home. And this little boy came with his father to take me and my friend Debbie back to the airport. And I sat in the back with this little boy, and he shared his story. That little boy told me a story that I'll share with you shortly. But basically, he said his dad woke him up in the middle of the night. I'll share it now. He said his dad came in and he said, son, we need to go. Pack your bag. He said, it was the middle of the night. This is a little 5-year-old boy. Pack your things, we gotta go. The boy packed 2 bags, the equivalent of like our Meyer bags. And his dad comes in and they were packed full of toys. He packed his things. And his dad said, son, you can't take your toys. We have to pack what you need. And he said, this boy said, I left my dog, I left my horse, I left my swing set, and I left my balls. It was a very sad day. And I just tried to hold back the tears because you want to show empathy and kindness, but if you start crying, then they stop because they feel they have to comfort you. That's typical. When people are in pain, we want to listen, but when you say, oh, you start to feel in front of them. So there's a balance between that, but I kept it together. And he then shared more with me, and that boy spoke for 5 minutes about his pain. And then he said, I don't want to talk about this anymore. It makes me sad. I don't want to cry. 5 minutes. The trip alone was worth that 5 minutes. That little boy had to leave his country. His father was in charge of getting a group of over 60 refugees together and across the country, by foot, in the dark, getting to their vans, getting all of this stuff. And he was there also. So yeah, when you get ready to have your garage sales and you're wondering what to sell, think about what you would take in your backpack if that's all you had. More humbling was when we first got there and we flew and we were in Romania. And you are the first group. I haven't shown this picture to anybody. Now it's going to be on YouTube, that's fine. I wanted to show you a picture because I always, I cropped out the men. I didn't want to do that for this. I want to share personal experience, and this is what emotionally impacted me. Men that couldn't be in their country, they had to leave for one reason or another. Not sure, there were some exceptions. Serving. Passing me soup. It reminds me of here in Alpena, I can't remember the name of it, but they have the soup kitchen. It's at the St. Paul. Yeah. What's the name of it?
The Friendship Room.
The Friendship Room. And I went to the Friendship Room because one of my relatives was homeless. Not just any relative, my mother had become homeless. See, Mrs. Paquette, you made a difference in my life. because I grew up and I didn't have kindness and nurturing. And when I went to school, you were there and other kind of people who taught me things. But I went to the friendship room. Let's just be, since this is personal experience, I'm going to personally share with you that I went there because my mom was homeless because of decisions that she made. But I went to have lunch with her at the friendship room. And there was a picture there of a bowl of soup being passed between hands. So Rocky, would you please come up here and let me explain this picture. We'll see if you, so I'm passing you this bowl of soup. But the picture is that the bowl of soup, you can't tell who is giving and who is receiving. You can't tell who's the one in need, right? So that's why I cropped the people out. I just wanted to see those hands because I remembered when I went there and they passed me the bowl of soup. See, it is better to give than to receive. And any of you, thank you, Rocky. Anyone that is giving, it is better than receiving. And you get to help. But there I was, and they passed me that. And that's the visual that I got in the friendship room when I was humbled and being passed a bowl of soup or whatever it was, because in their generous and kindness, they gave. So I cropped out the people because I wanted to protect their dignity. I don't know these men's names. All I know is that in their pain, they kept giving. They kept giving. And it was a great, great meal with bread, homemade bread. Who doesn't love homemade bread? Right? It's so good. And I wanted to just cry. I could have filled the bowl with my tears. Say, keep it together, Kelly. You're here to comfort. But I just was so deeply moved. And I would go back to my little room. My friend Debbie, she's married, she has 4 kids. We go back here. We each had a twin bed. Everywhere we went, it was like we each had a twin bed, which is cool because I'm a twin. And then we'd go in there and we'd go out and give, and then we'd come back and either cry or not. And it was intense, the things that we heard. They were very intense because they started to share with us. For example, when we first got there, I took these beach balls, right? And that were like globes. Like he's got the whole world in his hands, right? I remember singing that as a kid. And I took this, and the first thing that I did with these little kids was I took the beach ball, this ball, and then I just don't let it hit the ground, and they tried to keep it up. And then my little interpreter, she became my interpreter because she was the only one that knew English. And I didn't, and she started saying to them what I had said. The ball hit the ground, and we had done this for a little bit, and she picked it up, and I said, "Where are you? Where are you from?" And she said, "Right here," and she pointed to the Ukraine. That's where I'm from. She knew the map. And then, see that X right there? She then took her finger and went over Russia. Just, and she was like, and the little boys were running around, and they said, one of the leaders says, "We're kind of alarmed because they're running around talking about blowing up Putin." Right? And I said, well, that's, don't be alarmed by that. They're expressing themselves. They're young boys. They're like, let's, they want to protect. It's innate within us. Like women want to provide or nurture, and it's like, and we can't go. And their dads are still there, or their grandfathers. And there's this emotion. I said, don't be alarmed. I mean, they're just playing with little sticks and all of that. See, anger isn't wrong. Do you know that? You have to know this is what I told them and this is me. And remember my personal experience, so I can say what I believe, correct? Right. Be angry and sin not. That's scripture. You have permission to be angry. Well, hell yeah. Because there's some things that you should be angry at. And if you're not, I'm like, pulse, where's your pulse? Do you have a pulse still? Have you checked out? Be angry. Some things you should be angry about. There were women that were raped. There were children that were raped. You would watch the news here possibly, and I remember I watched and I said, I can't watch anymore. I have to just prepare and prepare, because if I get too much of this in my head, it will jade me and it will skew my perspective. So I stopped watching the news. But one of them said that there were like 51 people in a basement in this place. Well, you know what? There weren't 51 people in the basement. There were 351 people in a basement. It wasn't for 3 days, it was for 6 weeks. In the first 4 weeks, 11 people died in the basement. It was in a school. Yeah. So yeah, we can be angry. And for those of you that are very faith-based and very strong in your faith, and you may disagree with me, that's okay. But I'm telling you, it's okay to be angry and sin not. It's see, hurt turns to anger. And that's okay, but we have to acknowledge what hurt us. So I took these Band-Aids. So you've heard me talk about Mrs. Paquette. So I'm going to ask Mrs. Paquette, would you come up here, please? And I'll give you this example. So here she is. Come closer. Wow, you're tall. You're tall. Okay, so what I did, I took these Band-Aids and I said, what do you do with the Band-Aid? So what are they used for?
Put it on an owie.
Put it on an owie. Well, and usually people are like, bleeding, or you cut yourself, or you have a sliver, right? Well, I gave them each one of these and I said, I want you to put it where it's visible. And so which hand do you want me to put it on? Okay, so I'm reminding you that you're in pain. There might be something that we can't see. They weren't bleeding, right? But I say, I want you to put this where you can see it and you can be reminded that you actually are in pain. Right? Thank you. You can keep that. Because emotional pain, and think of it, it's like women that are in women or men or anybody, they're like, I would rather be punched than the words that were said. That's emotional pain, right? You can have emotional pain that hurts worse and you just wish that it should just be like that and it's over, instead of this crushed spirit. So I gave them permission to be angry, and it was okay. Because when we got there, look at that little face. Look at that little face. His dad was still over there. He was still over in another country. My goal was to get the children to play, provide a safe place for the children so the mothers could express their emotions and their pain, but they didn't know how to do it. There were no words. This was Romania. So this was my interpreter. That's me with the wild hair. And I would speak and then they would interpret. And that young boy's mom is in that crowd. We just started. This was one of our first times, and we met for hours. We'd go for an hour, take a break, more coffee, bread, more coffee, and just listen. They couldn't even find the words. Some of them did not speak. It was Easter weekend, and my goal was that I took a kites, and I wanted them to write what they feared in their pain and what they were burdened about in their language. I don't even know what this says. I don't even know if it's upside down right now, but they wrote it. Some could not even express their words. It took them like 2 or 3 days to get these back. It was like 2 days. And I said, we're going to take these and we're going to tie them on the end of a kite string, the tail of a kite, and we'll fly it on Easter. Because there's a verse that says, cast your care upon the Lord, for he careth for you in 1 Peter. We'll just lift it up. Well, it rained all day and I didn't get to do that. And that's where Sanborn Elementary School comes in, because if you did get to read about the article that was in the Alpena News that Darby Hinckley wrote, the goal was that since I couldn't fly it there, I told them, I will fly this kite. I will put this, and we did it at Sanborn Elementary School. And we were able to tie them to the end of the kite and lift them up. But what do you do when there are no words? What do you do when there's no real answers and you're still in pain? We won't always have all the answers, will we? We won't have all our answers to the questions this side of heaven. We just won't. So you listen and you show kindness and you show compassion. And I played a lot. Alpena Elkona Area Credit Union, they donated yo-yos, and I taught little kids how to yo-yo and then walk the dog and around the world. And then I told them life will go up and down, but some things remain the same. God's love for you. He careth for you. Now this, I want to show you, this was the first day, and look at this picture. That's me in the front, okay? So if you see my air, can you, oops, oh, spoiler alert. At the front row, there's a lady to my left. The lady in the yellow, she's an artist. A really popular Ukrainian artist. This is precious. You know why this is precious? Because she gave of her little. She didn't have a lot. She wrote me a letter. She gave this to me. Dear Kelly, thank you so much for your ministry to us during this time of war. May God bless you in a special way. Word of Life Ukraine, Word of Life Romania. Hebrews 6:10. I never looked that up, but maybe you will. Hebrews 6:10. That's in the New Testament. Isn't that great? There's literature there that was on the table. So they put together this literature here. You see the children, trying to help the children understand their pain. People that gave, they helped get me there. Then I got to play with toys and Play-Doh and yo-yos and beach balls to allow, you know what I was doing? Tilling the ground, just play therapy, get them to think of something outside of war. And most of all, that the mothers, who they call them helicopter moms here, right? The ones that are hovering around trying to protect their kids so much. They put hello moms in a whole new category, because you can imagine they wanted to protect them and keep them safe. And I thought, they need help. They need a break. They need to rest. They need to speak their fears, their concerns, their worries, their pain. And it's different when kids are around, because, right? You don't want them to see you cry. You have to be the strong mom. And so the girl in the yellow hoodie was the one who wrote this, or drew this. And I can't wait to frame it, but I saved it for this presentation. I'm going to put that in a frame and protect it from me and my ADHD. But the lady on my left, we never spoke a word. We never spoke a word. And she did not speak at the meetings. I don't know which one of her cares, which one she wrote. I know she wrote something, but she did not utter a word. Her pain was so deep, she didn't even know how to express it. So some did use words, and then they cried and they wept and they were angry, and some were just like, everybody was different. Because you know it, like even in your homes, let's say I grew up in a home with 6 kids, right? And an event happened, and it was a very tough childhood. Something would happen and one person would perceive it one way, another person would perceive it another way. One sister, when the parents divorced, was like, she still needs therapy over it. And I'm like, okay, the divorce didn't bother me, but this sister, who I love dearly, is still troubled. That divorce really troubled her. Everybody's going to have a different perspective of an event, perception, because everybody's different. And not everybody can express it with words, and children can't. Even within your own homes, you think of your children or your grandchildren, everybody has a unique personality, and they will feel differently. This woman did not speak, but I connected with her. I don't know why. Maybe we were both the same height, but we had taciturn, unspoken, but understood. I see you. And she said, thank you. I see your pain. Thank you for coming. We spoke volumes, but not uttered a single word. And when we left, they said, hey, we're going to take a group picture here. And then she reached over. I never reached for their hands. They reached for mine. And it about made me go fetal. I was like, oh. So like, then she hugged me and she said 10,000 words with her hug. Sometimes we think we have to have words. Henry Nouwen, he has since passed, but he was a Catholic priest and he wrote The Wounded Healer. And he said that he would go into the hospitals and sometimes it was just the ministry of presence. He wouldn't even say a word. It was the ministry of his presence. What do you say when you don't know what to say? You don't have to say anything. And then I said to the kids, group hug. I don't even know what they were thinking. Because I was always expressing myself like everybody knew English. Everybody knew what I was saying. Group hug. And I just did this. And then they came around me and we just hugged. We just hugged. Right? And they're like, loving it. And of course, I did give them a lot of candy and there were a lot of toys. And they were happy seeing me coming, right? But it was a beautiful thing to get a group hug. What's better than I did have to ask for it. Try to say group hug when you're in an elevator, just for fun. When you get in the elevator, nobody's talking, just say group hug. Sidebar, just kidding. But this was beautiful. So if you're trying to be kind to somebody and build a relationship and get them to express themselves, just provide a safe environment, non-judgmental. Don't tell them what to feel and give them permission to feel, because you have to feel to heal. You can't stop this, because hurt turns to anger. And sidebar, this is for you. Anger turns to bitterness. Bitterness turns to wrath, that inner rage. You're so mad, you're shaking. Wrath turns to malice. When you actually do strike a wall or break a dish, which was common in my household, and malice turns to murder. Not that you're going to take anybody's life, but this is when people say, well, how could you come to that point where you would want to take your life? Hurt. So when I find an angry person, I ask them, when was the last time you cried? I give you permission. Acknowledge it. This hurt me. So that's the progression. Please don't email me a bunch of questions about suicide, because I'm a little busy. And by the way, I had thought this or whatever. I am a speaker. I am not a counselor. I come to you as somebody sharing a personal experience of how I helped people and gave them permission to be angry at something that we should be angry at, and that if you're not, you should be more concerned why you're not worried about it. Now, I also knew I wanted to set a boundary because I said, I can't pick up their offense. This is not my war. I am going for them to love them and set a boundary. So I don't bring it back with me and think, we should be doing this. We should be. No, I just did what I could. And I remain engaged in their life. And many of them I still am in contact with. So I said an awful lot to just basically say, this is one of those topics that could go political. And anytime, and I'm not that person. So you're going to have to find somebody else who likes that conversation. I want to help people understand their emotion. Gave that little child in the backseat of that car permission to talk about his feelings. And it was, for that point in time, it was worth it. We left Romania and we went to Hungary and we stayed at this castle. Just suffering for Jesus, just suffering. It's interesting because really we were only in 3 different rooms in that castle. One was the bunker where we ate, and the other was the room where we had the narrative therapy with the women. There were only 2 children there, so that this place didn't have the children, the other place did. And then where we slept in our little twin beds. But it sure was beautiful. Eastern Europe is beautiful. And these were the people that I met. Now the lady right behind me, you'll see she's wearing like a white hoodie. Do you see that girl? Right there. She was the one that was 7 months pregnant and on bed rest. She stood up for this picture. Her husband, he was still in Ukraine, boots on the ground, helping people. And his wife stayed or left, and his wife was on bed rest. They weren't even sure that she would make it. I mean, many people made sacrifices. He was there hugging the bushka and wasn't even there for the birth of his own child. It was painful. Separation is painful, isn't it? To be separated from people that you love. And imagine her worry for her husband and his worry for her. Well, I'm happy to tell you that this baby was born. And then on July 1st, he got to hold his baby for the first time and they were reunited. But imagine what he saw with his eyes. Imagine the missiles, because even while I was there in Romania, a woman came running out of where they were housed and she was just crying. And I'm like, what? Are you okay? What? She was like, the missiles. While on the phone with her husband, a missile flew over his head. This was in Romania. And so then it was just a matter of listening and comforting her and getting an interpreter and just trying to just listen. Right over his head. And he was on the front porch of his home. Because not everybody's home got blown up. Schools, hospitals, large complexes of condominiums and homes, or you see them. While on the phone. That's how close it came to him. Then when we were in Romania, one of the women that was at the narrative therapy, meaning basically they just get to speak and talk, and then we just listen and offer a perspective if we can. Because Debbie's a counselor, I'm a counselor. Listen, and then give advice if we had it. And we didn't always have the answer. One girl in the morning, her countenance was still troubled, but she was present. The afternoon, she was gone. I was like, what happened? Where is this person? She had a conversation with her father. And while on the phone with her father, a missile went over his head. It's just so close to home. Too close to home. And all we could do was listen and allow them to emote. How wonderful that this man got to hold his baby, and now they're together. There is hope. I took this picture because this tulip, I mean, it was just, to me, it was like a little flower that comes up in the concrete. And it was like, there's hope. There is hope. So at this point, we'll see if there's any questions that came in, but I still don't know what they say. So Rocky, are you able to see if any questions did come
Do
in?
you have any questions that came in? I don't
None?
think we have any.
Okay.
So
And I don't mind questions. You can email me questions to drkellybushéy@gmail.com. I don't mind those questions. It's just when it's related to you being in personal need and you're emotional, then you want to reach out to the suicidal hotline or to the resources in your community, because it does exist. And also I talked about things that are emotional. So I do want to encourage you to, if you have any questions regarding this trip, any statements, things that you do want to share with me, that's drkellybushéy@gmail.com. And thanks again for having me.
all right, thank you, Kelly. It was really interesting. I'm sure we'll have some talks about it amongst us after the fact. So you brought it home to us that in a way that we don't ever get a chance to experience. So thank you for sharing with us, and thank you guys for making this happen here in the room. So appreciate it.